Today we've got a great story of inadvertently getting some awesome revenge. We'll get into that in a bit, but first, my 20-year-old male, girlfriend's 21-year-old female, best friend called me broke, then asked my girlfriend to pay for her trip. I'm in my second year of college, and I thought I had my life pretty much figured out. I had a girlfriend I loved, a part-time campus job that kept me afloat, and a small but close group of friends. Life wasn't perfect, but it was good. Then her best friend came into our lives. I'm not the type to dislike people without a reason, so when my girlfriend introduced me to her, I genuinely tried to be friendly. But from day one, she had this energy that I don't like. She made these small comments about my clothes, my old phone, and once even joked in front of everyone that my car looked like it was built before Wi-Fi existed. I laughed it off, but it stung. It got worse when money came into the equation. One night, we were all out for coffee and I paid for everyone. It wasn't a big deal for me. I like doing small gestures like that. But after that, her friends seemed to expect it. We would go out, she would forget her wallet or nudge my girlfriend with a smile like it was some inside joke that I would cover her. The real crack in the wall came when my girlfriend told me her friend had been saying that I was cheap because I didn't want to split the cost of a random weekend trip they planned without me. I couldn't instantly drop $300 for a trip. I was broke. It bothered me because I'd been working hard to be smart with money. My parents didn't have a safety net for me, so every dollar I spent mattered. I wasn't just blowing cash around to look good. I was trying to build a stable life. Here's the twist, that trip they took, my girlfriend ended up paying for her friend the whole time because she didn't have enough saved. The same friend who called me broke. Ironically, a month before, she had been bragging about buying a $200 Zara haul at the mall, and then some expensive makeup at Sephora. Here's the petty part. I decided that from that day forward, I would never cover anything for her again. No coffee, no snacks, nothing. I got Fizz to track every cent I spent so there would be no, "Oh, I'll pay you back" nonsense. If she forgot her wallet, I would politely say, "No worries, you can grab it next time," and order my stuff alone. She hates it. She's not used to me setting boundaries, and now she doesn't get a cent out of me. My girlfriend's noticed too. She says it's weird seeing her friend actually pay for her own things. Sometimes you don't need to fight someone to protect yourself. You just need to stop giving them access to the parts of you they can take advantage of. Good on OP for standing up for themselves. Some people would be like a bit too people-pleasing and kind of allow them to steamroll them. And I mean, some people have that mindset of, regardless of how really well you're doing financially, you still have to cover food and drink and whatnot. Like, I would almost hesitate to really call it truly revenge. It feels like kind of just standing up for yourself. Bite Fantail commented, "For the longest time, I was a broke, jobless college student. I would sell art now and then to pay for things I enjoyed, and when I finally got a job, it paid for books, and there was never anything left over. I'd regularly have $7 in the bank for 4 days before I got paid $160, and it was usually gone by the end of payday. I remember I would go out to friends, and there was always someone that covered me, but it sucked. And then I got better jobs, and eventually I was able to cover other people. I was able to not have to check my balance before buying something, and now I can be the one to cover a friend's dinner when we go out." Also, hi, I'm Steven, and if you guys enjoy crazy stories of revenge, why not hit those like and subscribe buttons down below? Our next story is, "Park like a jerk, get boxed in like a jerk." Went to Walmart tonight, August 11th, and found someone trying to park in 2 spots front and back. I noticed they were really close to my parking space line, so I did what I had to do. I parked really close and got out of my passenger side. I go in and do my shopping. I come out and I'm headed towards my car when I realize they're standing there trying to get in. So I keep walking past my car and go sit 2 parking aisles over and proceed to watch them struggle to get in. Don't try to take up 2 spots when parking, and you won't have to look like an idiot trying to get back in. For anyone asking, my car is a POS and I ain't worried about a dent. Also, I parked well within my own parking spot and only inconvenienced the double parker. This story kind of makes me curious. I know most people are going to look down on a double space parker, but what about somebody who has like a truck or a decent sized vehicle and they only do it way out in the deep depths of the parking lot where things are just in general a little bit more sparse? Does it become acceptable in that case? Or should you almost always try to just fit in the one spot? Dial Dad commented, Once long ago when I was younger at a concert, someone parked behind my car, completely boxing me in. I was there with a big group of friends, and nearby was an alley that was just a bit wider than their car was long. We took a group of our guys, I think there were like 12 of us, and carried the car blocking me into the alley and set it there with only about 6 inches of clearance in the front and back. I still wish I would have stuck around to see the person come out and find their car in there. I'm pretty sure it would have been impossible for them to drive it out. Our next story is maybe a little more than petty revenge. Years ago, I had a job where we all had to park our cars on one side of the dead-end street our office was on. There was one guy I absolutely did not get along with. As the crews went out, he would spit on my car. I knew it was him doing it. I saw him do it, and one of the guys in his crew confirmed it. One very hot summer day, 1980 Texas, if you know, you know, I was going out of town for a few days, but I had to go in to get my paycheck. I poured a pint carton of milk down the fresh air vents of his car. I found out later it did stink up his car pretty bad and he couldn't figure out why. Either he got used to it or got the smell out. He still spit on my car, not connecting me to it, and I poured another carton down the vents from time to time. It drove him crazy. The city eventually closed down our department and we all moved on. I actually ran into him several years later, asked him how his car smelled. He was not happy. I told him why. He claimed he spent a lot of money to get rid of the smell. All he had to do was stop spitting on my car. You know, I just don't get it. Why was this guy spitting on OP's car? Like, what do you get out of it? Is it just like the mental image of, I've spat on this thing, I've defaced and degraded it, and therefore it makes me happy or something? 2:37 a.m. commented, so simple, so elegant. I remember the summer of 1980. We lived in southeastern Arkansas at the time. I remember it being so hot and dry that the dirt on the ground cracked. It looked like the images of dry skin and moisturizer commercials. Our next story is, my cousin's bio dad wants to connect with him after over 20 years. I got the go-ahead to tell this story a few days ago. My cousin, 20-year-old male, is a somewhat famous rapper in his local area. When he was born, his bio dad basically left him and his mom to starve in either North or South Dakota. My cousin's mom was able to leave that state and return to my dad's side of the family. I'm not 100% sure of the details, but somewhere within his dad's desertion, his dad was scared off by my father. My cousin and my aunt years later moved on, and my cousin was adopted by my uncle, a wonderful man who still sees my cousin as much as his bio son, as if he helped conceive him. Cue to now, my cousin's 20, a locally famous rapper in his immediate area, lives on his own with a friend or two, and still has a good connection with his mom and his dad. His adoptive father, who took care of him since he was like 4. His bio dad was cyber stalking him, liking photos and posting photos of my cousin when he was in middle school. Soon, his bio dad messaged him online about how my cousin is his son because he helped with the process to create him. My cousin, my father, my aunt's sister, and I were losing it. I have no idea how my dad felt about it, but I know my cousin and I were finding the situation hilarious, with me and him calling his bio dad a sperm donor and a walking, talking sperm bank. My aunt's sister is ticked and wants to unalive him. She can't, considering she isn't that crazy, and my 2 aunts live in different states. To make it better, or worse, my cousin's sperm donor was now saying how my cousin's mom was sleeping with other guys, when it was in fact him sleeping around, and excluding my cousin's 2 sisters that were conceived of my uncle and aunt. He has 20 siblings, all in various states. When I first heard the situation, I told him to post online about how my uncle is the best dad in the world, and if he felt like, roast his donor of a bio dad, because I'm petty like that. Well, he did it. On his social media, he showed screenshots of his bio dad trying to claim that my cousin is his son, all the while the song I Don't Freak With You by Big Sean, featuring E40, was playing. I'm not a fan of rap music, but I was dying laughing at the choice of my cousin's song in regards of that. To put icing on the cake, my cousin mentioned that his bio dad can keep the spoiled milk he left to get after 20 years of absence, and all he did was essentially donate to my aunt's uterus. As far as I know, that's all the tea spilled about the situation. Yeah, I think unfortunately it's just the money, or the potential money, that is dragging this bio dad back. I mean, even like OP excessively pointed out, even calling this guy Bio Dad is generous. It's kind of a thanks for doing your part and making sure I exist, now go kick rocks kind of situation. Imgaron commented, relatives become important to them once the smell of money or fame is in the air. Our next story is, don't be a rude eBay seller. So I sell on eBay and sometimes buy in bulk to flip. Recently, I spotted a listing for a bunch of TI Inspire calculators marked as school property. They were listed for parts only with the condition, turns on but needs additional equipment. I've sold a lot of calculators, and usually if they turn on, they're fine. So I sent the seller a polite message asking why extra equipment was needed. His response? Just for you to ask to show your intelligence, LOL. Bored? Completely unprovoked. I told him I wasn't being rude, just curious, and he doubled down. If you were smart enough to read the description, you wouldn't ask anything. I'm not entitled to educate you. Then said he's just going to block me so he doesn't waste his time. Normally, I would roll my eyes and move on, but I didn't for this seller. I looked at his negative reviews and apparently he does this to everyone and is very racist about it. There's even a negative feedback complaining he canceled an order before shipping and he replied it was because he was a Honduras scammer or something like that and makes fun of people who speak Spanglish. So I dig, and I find that his listing descriptions has his phone number. I Google that phone number and find that he runs another eBay store under a company name that claims to do electronics recycling and refurbishing, selling different inventory of high-ticket medical devices, like electrotherapy units, ultrasound heads, laser therapy applicators, the kind that require FDA 510K clearance and can't be legally sold to the general public without prior authorization. eBay has an entire policy banning these unless you're an approved medical seller. So I spent some time compiling a list of his priciest, clearest violations. I cross-checked them with the FDA's device classification database and matched them to eBay's medical devices and accessories restricted list. Then I reported them all through eBay's Item Not Allowed category, attaching the exact model names and classification codes. Fast forward to this morning, eBay emails me to say 6 of his most expensive listings are gone, including multiple $2,000 plus medical therapy devices, electrotherapy systems, and vital accessory packs. They even removed some 4 parts only listings, which eBay still bans if they're restricted devices. In fact, the total amount for the listings removed came out to be $13,590. I'm not saying I sank his store, but I probably ruined his week. Moral of the story, if you're going to be smug and block people for asking questions, make sure your business model can survive someone actually reading the rules. Edit, I actually missed a listing. The total is $18,140. You know, in this scenario, I'm just glad OP had an avenue to get back at this guy. I wish I could say the same for a relative of mine who had an experience where they bought something at a really good price on eBay. The seller canceled the order saying, "Oh, sorry, I just don't have that item in stock anymore." And then they went and turned around and relisted the exact same item hoping to fish for a bigger price anyways. Xenomorph Hive commented, "Good on you getting him back. I've dealt with a similar guy that was being rude after I called him out on shipping an $80 comic without a backing board or anything to keep it stiff, and without bending and creasing further in a US mail carrier envelope. Luckily it got to me fine, but it's hard to say if it had less creases before he sent it." His response was, "You got the comic right. If you're not going to give me a good rating, I'm blocking your butt." Still expecting a good rating after such an interaction just to advise him he could have packed an expensive item better was what made me mark it from a good to a bad review for being a rude seller. Midwestern like Ope commented, "A seller mocked me when a product I bought and used didn't work. They messaged me and told me not to slander their company. They have tons of satisfied customers. I didn't realize my reviews were public, so they found a scam purchase I previously made and called me an idiot. I added their unprofessional response to my review." Our next story is, you get what you give. Reading someone else's post reminded me of when I was a bartender in my 20s. It was a dance bar, and there was this one regular who was always just sort of tossing his money at me, always bills, and he would never tip. And frequently, he would then turn around and park his butt directly in front of the bar so other customers couldn't get to me. I felt like George Costanza yelling, "We're living in a society here." One day I'd had it. I was in a cranky mood and we'd been getting slammed when he comes along, orders the usual, and then tossed his money at me like I'm supposed to chase it. So I pulled out his change and whipped it down toward the counter so all the coins bounced up and flew in multiple directions. He had to scramble to pick it up amidst the flying feet on the dance floor. He stopped coming to my side of the bar after that. Respect service people. They're in between you and that thing you want. Oh, and more importantly, they're human beings. You know, even if the service is bad, I'm just gonna try to be as polite as possible solely because of what OP said. They are the people between you and your drink, your food. I'm not saying that there's a great chance that some terrible waiter or waitress would turn around and spit in your food or something, but I ain't saying it either. There's way too many gross people out there in the world for me to not worry about that. Think about all the times you go to a public restroom and you see somebody walk out without washing their hands. You know who you are. Ugly Girl Doll commented, "I got tired from my job at a club when I was a student. Idiot regular who used to whistle at you like a dog decided to throw the money at me. My gut reaction was to throw the drink over him in return. Worth it." Our next story is, told rude lady we couldn't accept Canadian coin. This was probably about 15 years ago, back when I was still in retail and working for a popular bookstore chain in a very affluent area in the US. One lady came up and was on the phone the whole time, getting annoyed when I had to ask questions, not even looking at me, just an all-around rude turd. Anyway, I heard her say to the person on the phone that she still has so many coins left from her previous trip to Canada, and she was still trying to get rid of them. Then I saw her specifically picking out all of the Canadian coins to give me to pay for her stuff. Normally, I didn't care if a few made their way in. It happened, and I didn't kick up a fuss. But it bothered me she was specifically picking them out to unload them on us. So I decided to be petty because her manners were non-existent. I said, "Sorry, ma'am, I can't take these. They aren't US tender." She said, "What? Oh, who cares? Canadian money is all over and it doesn't matter. They look similar." I said, "Sorry, that's policy. I can't accept foreign money." She scoffed, rolled her eyes, and of course was grumbling and snotty when she handed me the right coins, but whatever. I made her slightly inconvenienced for her rudeness. Mwahaha. Now, I'm gonna be honest, this one is quite a bit of a stretch. I, a cashier in the US, chose not to accept somebody's Canadian coins. Is that really a revenge, or is that just the right way to do your job as a cashier in the US? Is it wrong for me to be stunned that OP even said, it's fine if a few make it in here or there? I mean, OP shouldn't be out there in the States accepting loonies and toonies. Prestigious Promise 20 commented, "A certain movie star had a fit when she paid with US dollars at a store I worked at and was given Canadian back in change in Vancouver, Canada. I wasn't there that day, but staff talked to each other." Our next story is texting grandma. So I was out in the town and admittedly a bit intoxicated. Well, long story short, this dude bought me and my friend a couple of drinks and started asking us to do truly depraved things. For backstory, I am 100% no contact with my family and have them blocked on everything because they were emotionally neglectful and abusive and just terrible people, especially my mother and my grandmother. I still have my grandmother's phone number memorized, however. So, back to the point, this guy wants some stuff done. So I wrote down my grandmother's number, told him it was mine, and told him to text me in the morning with all the disgusting, depraved things he wants me to do to him and wants to do to me. I told him to be explicit in detail. I have no idea if he did text that number at all, but I like to imagine he did. It brings me joy. You know what? I'll take it one step further. I'd like to believe that they did text that number, and Grandma didn't know who it was, but was game to text right back and play along. Dioscowry commented, "This is awesome. When I was a kid, before caller ID, someone at school, I don't remember now who, passed around a phone number and asked everyone to call it and ask for name. I called a couple of times. I don't remember how often, just when I was bored and thought about it. I'm pretty sure the rest of the school was similarly engaged. Then, after a while, she called the number and said she was name. And do they have any messages for her?" Dapper Explanation 77 commented, "I was telling this to my coworker the other day. When we were bored as kids, we would call a random number from the phone book and tell them Don Quixote was calling, and whether they had seen our horse, Rocinante. Later, we would call the same number and say Rocinante was calling, and has Don Quixote looked for us? We thought it was supreme humor, but the hilarious part was that we lived in a small village with mainly old folks who probably hadn't heard of Don Quixote, and let alone Rocinante. Our next story is, woman takes revenge against car dealership. An Ohio woman whose car was repossessed by the dealership just 1 month after she bought it has pulled off a revenge move for the ages. Tia McCreary discovered, as she explored legal options against the company, that the dealer has failed to renew the registration on the company's name with the Ohio Secretary of State, so she registered it in her name, then hit the dealer with a cease and desist order, ordering them to no longer use the name they've used since 2012. Case is still pending. I think I've heard similar things kind of happening with like websites and website designers who get ripped off and never get paid for their work. They either never like took the domain actually from the designer or forgot to set up like renewal, so the designer just swoops in and steals the domain. The only thing that really comes to my mind with this story though is that Miss McCreary must have a good amount of time and money. I mean, not just anybody can go and register this name and then turn around and file and fund a lawsuit. Gixer6er commented, I used to work as a mechanic at this very dealership. They are very sue happy. I've never seen anything like it before. The company is awful to work for, and clearly they, as a dealership, are awful to do business with as well. You can look up the court cases they have at the Lima Municipal Court's website. There's at least 73 cases. They're a buy here, pay here dealership that masquerades as a new car dealership. I used to regularly install ignition interrupt devices and GPS devices for repossession purposes. If you live anywhere in Ohio, I would avoid all of their dealerships. From Toledo, Findlay, down to Lima, they are the stereotypical sleazeball used car dealership. In Lima, if you're in the market for a new Kia, go to Tom Mall and buy a new Hyundai. It's the same car. Our next story is inadvertent petty revenge. So this happened about 20 some odd years ago. It's kind of inadvertent minor revenge. I don't think petty really covers it. My second ex, she who must not be named, was a flaming backstabbing bench. Tried to turn friends and my own kids against me, lied, cheated, did whatever she could to cause chaos in my family and for me. I could go on at great length, but even now typing this I'm getting worked up. Anyway, she got the boot. I became a single dad of a very young son, ceasing her parental rights, visitation, the whole 9 yards. Several years go by. So my older son came into town. My daughter was at home with my youngest. Older son and I decided to go out for lunch. Driving on the loop and discussing where, he finally got off and we went to a Mexican restaurant I liked. He parked, and as I'm getting out, I noticed peripherally that there's people in the car next to me. It's my ex and her whole grifter family. 7 or 8 of them. Crap. My family luck back to bite me in the butt again. I, by God, came here to eat and I was going to eat. Her mother smoked. So did I, so I asked for a non-smoking table. They still seated us too close. Son and I ate, finished. Their table was chaos. Drinking, yelling, arguments, spilling everything everywhere. Told my son, we're done. So my son went out to bring the car around. I get up to leave. X had spawned 2 more kids who were there. One of them was at the end of the table, maybe a year or 2 old. They claimed he would scream bloody, red-handed freaking murder if any human being got near him. Yeah, cute. No, really. They all really started laying it on thick. Go over near him and see. Egging me on to test it by standing near the kid. No thanks. They pushed and pushed. I realized even at the time they probably wanted me to get embarrassed at the restaurant. I'm thinking my son probably was waiting with the car. Don't know what happened in my brain, but I walked over to the kid and looked at him for half a minute. He didn't seem to much notice me. I moved his chair over a couple of inches, pulled up a chair from another table and sat next to him. I looked at him. He looked at me. Someone said, "He must be in a really good mood." There was a stack of drink coasters on the table. I picked it up, divided it to equal portions, and stuck half in his hand. I raised his hand and spread them like we were playing cards. I fanned my coasters. He was looking at his coasters. I looked and decided and picked one of his coasters and put it with mine, examined them a moment, and then held mine up to him. I took his other hand and used it to pick one of my coasters to put with his. We went on like this for a minute or two. It's dead quiet at the table the entire time. Finally, I gave him all of my coasters, put the chair back, and said I gotta go. Not a sound from that table all the way to the front door. Screams when any human being gets near him, huh? Maybe he's just never been near a human being before. And I hope the restaurant counted the silverware. No, I'm not kidding. See, that's what I've been trying to tell everybody. You can calm a baby down with gambling. See, it's not a bad thing. I can stop when I want to. I'd also like to take this moment to add a disclaimer that I don't gamble. Coder Joe 1 commented, "You have an inhuman ability to calm children." OP responded, "I would get home from work and be on the floor with my son climbing all over me laughing." She said, "I don't know why he likes you so much." You know, from across the room. Once, when she still had visitation as I was getting ready for work in the afternoon, she suddenly decided after months that she needed her visitation. I followed directions to a trailer park where she lived, went up and knocked on the door. She answered. I had to go get my son out of the car and bring him inside. He had a little box of animal crackers he was eating. Just inside the door, there was a chair against the wall that he sat in. She was on a couch across from it, but further down. She talked to me 5 to 10 minutes with her stuff. The toilet backed up. She was having trouble with the AC, blah, blah, blah. I waited and waited. She never said a word to our son or so much as looked at him. My son sat staring at the blank wall across from the chair eating his crackers and never so much as turned his head to her. It was like they were in 2 different rooms. I left to continue on to work thinking I have to fix this crap. God only knows what a kid that actually lives with her goes through. Our next story is, won't finish her tattoo. This is why you never put all your eggs in one basket, folks. Kinda long. Former boss, caller Diana, called me between jobs for an assistant manager position at a store she'd just become GM of. Decent pay, and I was about to turn 26 and lose my parents' insurance. They offered the same plan and had great PTO, so it was perfect. Got hired quickly. At the same time, my boyfriend needed a place to stay, and she offered a room while we saved for a place together. My boyfriend would also have a good job once a position was available. What neither of us knew, she was drinking again, and I was being handed a failing store with beaten down staff from a string of bad managers. She also got a sister store's manager fired and took her job. A month and a half being with this company, and I was getting praised like crazy. I was promoted to GM with a $10,000 salary raise. I became content manager for the Facebook page, and daily sales were increasing 300 to 400%. Even started a partnership with a bulk buyer and her business, giving us free advertising. I'm working 10 to 12-hour days, even coming in on the day all stores are closed and no one works. I was putting my heart and soul into that store. At this point, Diana was putting liquor in her coffee at 7 a.m. and going home, 3 minutes from work, to sneak drinks. She was stealing from the store, and my boyfriend would see the stuff magically appear in the house. This is a non-profit thrift store string supporting an orphanage and children's home. She was going down, especially compared to my progress. Out of the blue one day, my boss in HR walked into my store and fired me. The reasons they gave were all things I had told Diana, but had been twisted or lied about. For instance, I'd called Diana about a problem employee when she was still my boss. I laid down the hammer on the employee, later found out I made a mistake, and immediately called her about it. She said she would have done the same. That very thing ended up being the firing factor. 2 days earlier, Diana randomly said we only have 2 weeks to stay at her place, and then didn't see her till she was at my store that morning, not hers. Her deer caught in the headlights face didn't make sense until I was fired 20 minutes later. My BF, now fiance, and I 110% believe she was behind me getting fired and decided to kick us out to protect herself. We also believe it was because I was doing so amazing and she was starting to look pathetic like she actually was while her drinking was catching up to her. I had started a tattoo on her one night when she was drunk to keep her from doing other stupid things. I know you're not supposed to tattoo drunk people, but she was talking about going and ending people for people she knew in gangs and whatnot, so I tattooed her to calm her down. Fast forward, I'm fired and kicked out, having to move to another state for help. She texts me about how horrible her life's been and she was fired not long after me, woe is her. And what does Diana say next? You need to finish my tattoo. No, ma'am, you chewed me up and spit me out. I'm not gonna finish your tattoo that symbolizes our friendship. I never replied and never will. Have fun with a tattoo only 1/3 of the way done. Well, unfortunately for her, she can't get that job back, but at least she can get the tattoo finished from somebody else. Probably. Automatic Term 3997 commented, whatever tattoo you started can only be improved with a large, veiny male appendage as its centerpiece. Give some more thought to finishing that design. Thumbs up. Our next story is, she thought she was being smart. Years ago, I worked in a store with multiple cash registers. I was second on call, so when things got too busy at the first register, I was called to assist. The policy was that you gesture to the next person in the other line. Please follow me, this register is opening now. It was an older man who started to gather some of his stuff that he'd already put down, and this fine specimen of a human paces from behind him, throws her stuff on the conveyor belt. I mentioned that the gentleman is supposed to be next, but she quickly retorts with a saying that literally translates to, life is for the quick ones. I'm visibly annoyed, but the older man waved his hand to me, suggesting me to let it go. As I check her out, she pays cash with a banknote. As I'm getting the change together, she realizes that she has change to match the difference, so she doesn't get that much change in return. She mentions, wait, I can match it probably, and starts rummaging in her purse. I already have all the change in my hand, gently smack it down in front of her and say, life is for the quick ones, and smile my most beautiful grin. She stormed off, and the older man gave me a thumbs up. It's just, a very polite way of saying, get the out of here. In the back of my mind, there would be a lot more words going on too. Fiesta Meister commented, as a former grocery store worker myself, I absolutely agree with OP and how they handled that. But unfortunately in retail, you do get rude morons like the woman that cuts everyone else off at registers. And unfortunately, the cashier has to cash them out regardless. OP responded commenting, thanks, and I agree with what you said. We try our best, but some people are not worth the time and energy. You want them gone ASAP. I'm glad I don't work in retail anymore, but sometimes I miss the interactions with the nice clients. Our next story is, keep the change, you filthy animal. I am a server, so of course I work for tips. This table had a wonderful time. Their every need was met for about 2 hours. I enjoyed stopping by to check in on them throughout the evening. Fast forward to the end of the evening, I'm putting in my tips and run across this annoyance. I had to reread it. I give them the benefit of the doubt as the payment was split between 2 cards. No, the other couple tipped appropriately for their portion. The charge was for $99.92, and they left me 8 cents. So the total would be $100. To begin, if you're not going to tip, that is your own decision, but really, pennies? They don't even begin to cover my tip out for the table. I didn't bother to enter the 8-cent tip into the computer. I hope that the OCD itches them right in the brain when they check over their bank account. I hope that they recheck their bank account for days afterwards just to see if the number changes. I get it. I round up on change as well. Integers just feel so nice, especially at intervals such as 100. Don't do this at the cost of someone else's livelihood. I won't deign to accept it. It's not really relevant to this story, but this story kind of reminded me of a time where my parents took me to a place where you just pay like an upfront fee, you get seated somewhere, and it's like an all-you-can-eat kind of thing. They still had waiters and waitresses come out to the table to drop off plates and things. When we were done eating and we were ready to leave, we realized none of us actually had physical cash on us. And remember, we paid the upfront entrance fee to get in, so there's no bill at the end. My household was never one that was very outgoing. I think we collectively just kind of agreed silently to never show our faces in that place again for at least a year. Coder Joe 1 commented, I worked for tips and was proud of my success at it. I tip well for good service. However, I really wish tipping wasn't a regular thing. Too bad we have a better chance of getting free healthcare for all in the USA before they change any laws to reduce tipping culture here. For the Posse commented, laws don't reduce tipping culture. My state's had it set so workers get tips on top of a guaranteed minimum wage, so they make hourly plus tips. I worked at a bank and a coworker got a second job at a fancy burger joint, complained about how low people tip to us at the bank who only get minimum wage and no tips. She literally boasted her higher income to us and managed to complain about low tips in the same sentence, while saying that waitresses depend on them. They think they're in the same crowd of workers who get reduced wages that actually rely on tips. Oh, and when I say this, people dismiss it and say that every restaurant in my state operates illegally and doesn't pay minimum wage just because a state law requires it. A variation of, I have no idea what I'm talking about. We need to straight up cancel tipping. Our next story is more revenge. Fake names as follows. I'm Mary, 54-year-old female. My best friend and business partner is Megan, 40-year-old female. And Jerk is Todd, 54-year-old male. Megan and I have been besties since about 2004. I started working for and then with her part-time in 2005, full-time in 2014. Todd, the Jerk, joined our company in 2011. This takes place in 2014. We live and work on the road. We have permanent brick-and-mortar homes, but we're only there about 4 months of the year. My first week full-time on the road, Todd informs me in the most entitled, condescending voice you can imagine that he doesn't have time for sneer errands, and he expected me to be the full-time errand girl. He actually said, I won't be leaving site to do laundry. I have too much work to do. The implication was that Megan and I didn't work as hard as him. A statement he made some other time, and we're basically sitting around goofing off all day and had plenty of free time. Megan winked at me. We had a plan. The next day, she and I leave to go get groceries. We also hit Victoria's Secret and Old Navy. By the time we get home, we each had enough underwear and clothes to last 8 to 10 weeks without needing to go to the laundromat. About 2 weeks later, Todd asks if I'm going to do laundry today. I say no, I'm good. I don't need to go yet. He blinks with an astonished look on his face and walks out of the RV. Later, he tells Megan that she needs to tell me to go do laundry because he's nearly out of socks and underwear and he's running low on shirts and pants. Megan replied, "Oh, huh. I don't need to do laundry yet, and I need her in the workshop." Another week goes by and he complains to Megan and me again, "I'm out of underwear." I cannot express how gratifying it was to tell him, "Gosh, how strange. Sounds like a you problem. We're still good." This went on for a full month before he finally left and did his own laundry. Look, if this guy is working too long and too hard that he can't do his own laundry, he needs to just call some service that can come out and pick it up and go do whatever dry cleaning or laundry service they need. I mean, if you're so busy and so hardworking that you can't pop into the coin op 1 hour sometime in the week to wash your dirty tidy-whities, surely you must be in some kind of position where you can afford that pickup and delivery fee. Our next story is, old lady got the ticket instead. This was taking place at my apartment about 21 years ago. I was 24 back then and was living in an 18 apartment building, probably made of cardboard and paper because the soundproofing was awful. I had this old lady and her husband as a next door neighbor. Once in a while, she would call the cops on me for noise disturbance while I was listening to some music or watching a movie. Each and every time the cops arrived, they were forced to admit that my volume was not high enough for an actual complaint. But they still asked me if I could turn it down a little. This happened a good dozen times before I got ticked and asked the policemen if they were allowed to ticket someone for repeatedly bothering them for nothing. They didn't really answer, but I could tell that it was making them think a lot. That was the last time I saw the police at my door from that old witch. Weeks later, the janitor told me she told him that she got a huge fine for bothering the police with false accusations. Justice served. To be fair, if she was turning the charm on to the cops, it is older lady is complaining about a loud noise and she's so sweet and whatnot. I could see how the cops might let it go a time or two or 17 times. Still note if commented, I was at a party like this in high school. No alcohol, we were playing music in the yard, but at a reasonable volume. There was a fire treated responsibly, parents were home, it was friends hanging out, never intended to be a rager. The cops got called. They spent 3 minutes chatting with us, and then 20 telling off the neighbor for wasting their time on what had to be the quietest party they had ever been called to. Just Aioli 1233 commented, "Most fun I had at a party, the cops were called, not due to a noise complaint, but because people weren't parking in the nearby lot like we told them to, but instead had filled up the long driveway, part of the yard, and had started parking on the street in a strict no street parking neighborhood. What's with these dozens of cars parked in front of this house? What could possibly be happening?" The most fun is often ruined by people not using the most basic thinking to not give it away. Anyway, some neighbor called the police about the loud party. You couldn't hear the music at all from the street, and the cars parked on the road. The person hosting got a $50 fine that we all covered, and a dozen people got parking tickets they were responsible for themselves. But the best part was the cops showed en masse thinking they were shutting down some massive illegal operation. It was hilarious watching them walk around with confused looks on their faces because there was no booze, no drugs, no one underage, nothing for them to do. They still tried barking orders, but we all ignored them. I think there were 3 to 4 attorneys in attendance of the 80+ people there, so we were well represented. Our next story is, got my money's worth. Many years ago, when I was a student, I spent my final year renting a room in a shared house which had about 8 bedrooms which were each individually rented out by the agency. All the other people in the house had graduated the previous year and had stayed in the city and got jobs, so I was the only student. Some of them knew each other and some didn't. I paid for a larger room on the first floor, but when I came in to move in, it had already been taken by someone else who wasn't there at the moment. So I moved into a smaller room on the ground floor. It was good enough for me and I was happy enough in that room for the year. But here's the kicker. I was paying approximately 40 British pounds a month more for the room I wasn't getting. The guy who took my room was hardly ever around as he had a girlfriend he stayed with, and when he did come in, he went straight to my room, and didn't speak with anyone. I left him notes to ask about him paying the extra money for the room as he wasn't supposed to be in that one. He ignored them all and never came to speak to me. It didn't really ruin my year as I'd been so busy with my work and just trying to get my final exams done, but when it came close to time for me to move out, I tried to talk to him again, and he did the "I'm just going out, but I'll sort it out with you when I get back later" move. Of course, later didn't come, and when the day came for me to leave, he was nowhere to be found. So I left a massive dog turd in his bed, and a few smelly fish in his wardrobe and in the pockets of his suits. Wish I'd seen his face when he got back, probably several days later, to the smell. Edit, some comment saying, "Why didn't I just do the sensible thing and report it to the agency or move the guy's stuff out of the room?" All valid concerns. However, I will say that I was a 21-year-old who was trying to get through his final year at college without failing, and whilst grieving a close family member, I didn't have the bandwidth or personality back then to just sort it out so simply as I would do now, and I didn't like confrontation. Doesn't mean it didn't happen. Well, I've got to be honest, I did not expect the story to turn out that way. I guess my question would be, where did OP get the massive dog turd from? They're in college, right? This is like a shared dorm kind of situation or like a roommate thing? They just have a supply of massive dog turds within arm's reach? Or find somebody out there walking their mastiff and say, "Hey, can I have a sample?" Our next story is, make me miss lunch? Happened many years ago. I worked at a company with a butt hat coworker that made work miserable. He would cut out for lunch early when he knew we were busy, which usually meant I had to work through lunch. One day, as I was punching out, I noticed his badge on the top of the refrigerator in the break room. Also on the fridge were magnetic calendars and such. Well, our badges were Kronos magnetic strip badges that we would swipe in and out. I took his badge and rubbed the magnet all over it to erase the info. Next day, he complained that his badge didn't work and he had to go to HR for a new badge. I think he had to go during his lunch break. Anyway, he got a new badge, and it happened again the next week. Then again the following week. 3 times. He finally stopped leaving his badge on the fridge. Could you imagine this guy like, "Man, I don't know what's going on with this fridge, but it just keeps killing my badges somehow. Is the top of the fridge made out of magnets?" 88 Curious commented, "Mostly off topic, but reminds me of a story a friend told from way back in the day. Their coworker was mystified why every morning information was missing or wiped from her large floppy disk. Friend asked some questions and observed the end-of-day routine. Problem was identified when she saw the workers' overnight storage, which involved taking the disc and placing it on the side of a metal cabinet with a large magnet. Our next story is Postcard Petty. This one is delightful in its simplicity. My mother was not one to frequently complain, but when the service she received or witnessed was truly bad, she would inform a manager. Whenever she decided the threshold for complaint was met, she would write a concise description of the situation with her complaint on a postcard and send it off. This way, everyone who encountered the card could read about the problem, including the staff in charge of getting the mail. I once had a demeaning boss who was the sister of the owner of a very gossipy dental practice. She was bossy and degrading, but also deeply insecure. You could tell she felt she was living in her dentist brother's shadow. Sometime after leaving the practice, following a really degrading interaction, I wrote an anonymous postcard to her that just said, "You're right. No one here really respects you." And I still smile thinking about how quickly that snippet made its way through the office. Look, bottom line here, that lady played the game wrong. If you're going to be an ugly, demeaning, spiteful witch of a boss or a coworker, you can't show your weaknesses. You can't just leave your butt hanging out there for everyone to see. It's like a first grader serving up a softball at that rate. Whack! No one here respects you. Twin Water Towers commented, "So basically an early form of a Google review for a business. I like it. I actually belong to a group called Post Crossing that sends postcards around the world to individuals in other countries, and I know my postcards get read by so many people before they get to their destination, and I like that." Our next story is Be Respectful of Others. I design and make leather gear that I sell at Renaissance fairs around the country. I do this with a couple of business partners, and we travel together in a large RV that we use as both living quarters and workshop. I and one of my partners do most of our work on large, very expensive, very persnickety industrial leather sewing machines. She and I have a rule that no one may touch our machines or place anything on the attached sewing tables without our express permission. They're our livelihood, they're easy to break, they're both expensive to purchase and costly to maintain or repair. When they break down, it means we can't produce more products, we can't keep up with sales, and it can be very difficult to find a specialist qualified to make repairs, hence the no-touch rule. We used to have a partner who refused to respect this boundary. Oh, he'd have a meltdown if anyone touched his work area, but zero consideration for anyone else's space or work. He would constantly pile anything and everything on and around our machines. He always claimed he forgot or the area was clear so it was okay for him to use it. He had an all-cast iron, non-enameled Dutch oven that he would use, clean, oil, and leave on the sewing tables. I would have to scrub the work surfaces every time to be sure the cooking oil didn't stain into the leather, not to mention that he always banged into the machines and we would have to fix and readjust them before they would work again. The first time this happened, we asked him nicely to not do it again. The second time, we told him to stop his disrespectful actions. There was a third time, so I took his extra oily, giant, heavy pot and put it on his bed under the covers, half on the mattress and half on the pillow. Oil and cooking grease soaked into everything. He headed to bed late and had to change all of his bedding before he could go to sleep. He had an enormous fit. I told him the area was clear, so it must be okay for me to put stuff there. He never put anything on our sewing tables again. We severed ties with him not too soon after that. As you might expect, this was not the only manifestation of his penchant for being a jerk. To be fair, I don't know if I truly appreciate just how irate OP would be. I mean, I guess I could apply the equivalent, somebody leaving their Dutch oven in a place where it gets oil and grease all over my microphone or something. Yeah, I would be pretty irate. I was going to say maybe putting it in his bed was a little too far, but now that I think about it being all over my microphone, the dude absolutely deserved it. NotMom15 commented, "Oh, a cast iron Dutch oven, you say? Next time, just sandblast that freaker till it shines. That way you wouldn't have to worry about any oil or grease." KJB Tetrick commented, "As much as that would have made the former business partner angry, that might also be a war crime, but would be categorized appropriately as nuclear revenge." Our next story is Alexa and Spotify for the petty revenge. So, as most married couples do, my husband and I have fights, disagreements, and annoyances. I used to get mad and bottle it up. Walks in Alexa, she plays music on demand, and not only that, she connects to your Spotify account. At first, it was just an accident. My young girls would start playing their toddler music. They've moved on to Disney and some other bad music that 2 to 7-year-olds listen to. He asked me to make sure it was off his account so it wouldn't mess up his Spotify list and recommendations. Well, let me tell you, when he upsets me, the girls would go crazy with Frozen, Descendants, Captain Underpants soundtrack, and Britney Spears all day on his account. Good luck with your end-of-the-year playlist, evil cackle. So, I didn't actually expect to relate so heavily to a post like this, but I had set up my own smart assistant which was connected to my Spotify account, and what I liked doing for a while was setting it up so it would play a song in the morning to wake me up as an alarm. I had been a pretty deep sleeper, so I wanted something like super aggressive and jarring, so I chose Through the Fire and Flames by Dragon Force. Problem is, I quickly realized the issue of it using my Spotify account. Dragon Force Through the Fire and Flames was my #1 song of the year because I played it 100 times in the morning as my alarm. Our next story is sharing my dad's petty revenge trick. I once saw a neighbor littering on purpose in my building's garden. She basically threw some trash that was in her car into our hedge. So, I picked the trash and put it on her windshield and lifted the wipers, thinking naively that she would know someone saw her and use a trash can. Next morning, the car left, but the trash was laying on the parking spot. So I picked the trash up again, and this time I took it home. A couple of days later, I saw the car again. I live in a densely populated area with many buildings. I don't know exactly where she lives, so I decided to ask my dad for some advice. See, my father is a really vindictive person, but at the same time prudent. He once followed some jerk who cut an elderly lady off at a gas station queue just to deflate his tires. Anyways, I asked him what I can do to her car without damaging it, but to make sure she would be annoyed as heck. And he shared me his pettiest but harmless trick. Take a large zip tie, tie the 2 wipers in lifted position together, and tighten it as much as possible. I'm pretty sure my neighbor lives in a building, so she likely had to take the elevator back home to get some scissors. She was probably late for work that day. Of course, I left a note and the trash. I'll never know if it ended up somewhere else, but the note stated that if I were to find the trash again, I'd make damages next time. Pretty sure she's paranoid now. All of this to say, this is a simple but effective way to annoy someone. I shared the trick with friends who had someone parking on their reserved spot. They used it effectively. Since the most common story I see on the sub is their neighbors parking in front of their driveway, I figured I'd share it to y'all as well. Enjoy. Yeah, so OP says, oh, this will be the perfect revenge for somebody who keeps parking in someone's specific driveway. Yeah, I don't necessarily think that's the case. I don't think you can leave a postcard that says, I tied your windshield wipers together, stop parking here or I'll make damages to your car, without becoming extremely prosecutable by the police. Is that not a clear as day threat from an obvious person? Without being immediately prosecutable by the police. I mean, you're literally telling them, this is from me, the person whose parking spot you're taking. Pickle Wallop commented, I was accused of causing damage to another car whilst reversing dead slow close to where I live. The damage was already on his car, but he made a claim for it and for whiplash. Caused issues with insurance. Around a year later, I came home one rainy night and saw his car parked up with a rear window open. I popped over to the local shop and got a bottle of full-fat milk. All over the backseat it went. He changed his car 6 months later. Affectionate Face 432 commented, my friend in college hated one of his roommates for being a spoiled rich kid and a jerk, so he poured whole milk into the person's engine. I imagine the difficulty of cleaning that, coupled with the awful smell of burnt, spoiled milk, had to be unreal. To make it worse, he also ripped off the Mercedes logo off the hood and wore it as a ghetto butt necklace. Our next story is, use my email address in store, I'll spend your loyalty reward points on cat treats. Back in 2021, I started getting random emails from Tractor Supply asking me to rate my order. I'm in the UK. So I had no idea what Tractor Supply was. Turns out they're in the US and they don't even sell tractors. When the first email arrived, I thought it was probably a mistake. The customer making the purchase at Tractor Supply may have just given the wrong email address at the checkout. I got in very early with Gmail, so my email address is very simple. It's understandable someone might have just made a mistake once or twice, but the emails kept coming. The simple solution would have been to just block the Tractor Supply emails, but I was feeling something a bit more petty in exchange for using my email address to send spam to. Turns out, I could create a Tractor Supply account on the website even though I don't live in the USA. And when I created the account with my email address, it connected my new account with the in-store loyalty profile the perpetrator was using my email address for. I could see the full history of their in-store orders, dog collars, cement, etc. When you make a purchase at Tractor Supply, you get points back to your loyalty account that you can then use to activate a reward. The perpetrator was waiting until they reached enough points to get a $10 discount off their next purchase. One of the other rewards you can buy with loyalty points is a voucher for a bag of cat treats. So now, every time I get an email from Tractor Supply about a new purchase, I log into my account and exchange my newly assigned loyalty points with a voucher for a bag of cat treats. The account currently has 8 accrued vouchers, and it's now turned into a game of how many cat treat vouchers I can get before they notice. I don't know how it works in store, or if there's a limit on how many you can have, but I'm secretly hoping on a future purchase the perpetrators asked if they want their 15 to 20 free bags of cat treats added to their order, and they finally realized they probably shouldn't have used a random petty stranger's email address. Edit, I just realized Tractor Supply lets you register your pets on the account. My guy now owns Nigel, a 666-pound pregnant gorilla who has a health concern of weirdly obsessed with cat treats. I'll tell you what, man, my 666-pound pregnant gorilla Nigel loves them cat treats. He just can't get enough of them. Thank God for you guys, Tractor Supply. I mean, I just wouldn't be able to function without being able to get all these cat treats off of the voucher program. Username commented, I went into Tractor Supply to get a fan belt for my case tractor with my dad. The store clerk laughed at me and said, we don't really sell that kind of stuff here. Without missing a beat, my dad said, come on, man, let's go to Radio Shack and get some milk. I don't think the clerk got our humor. Our next story is, don't scare women in the dark. I was at a party and wanted to go buy some cigarettes from a petrol station. It was around midnight. It was a short walk, maybe 500 meters, along a lightly winding bike path in a village in Germany, with the road on one side and bushes and trees and fields on the other. There were barely any cars. 1 to 2 people on bikes passed me, but generally very quiet. So on my way back, I was a bit concerned when I heard rustling 30 or so meters ahead of me, thinking of a boar from the forest. I stopped and waited, but the rustling sound persisted. It was just behind a curve and I couldn't see crap. Then I heard some whispers and stifled laughter. Male voices. I'm not scared in the dark, but the thought of men clearly hiding in the bushes did make me nervous. I stood still, not knowing whether to run, creep back to the petrol station, call for a friend from the party to get me or whatever, when one of them said, maybe she went a different way, in a hushed voice. Since it wasn't a whisper anymore, I kinda recognized the voice as one of my idiot friends at the party, which was then confirmed when I heard another familiar voice say, there's just the one way, she'll be here any minute now. The adrenaline already surging through me turned my fear into rage, and I was just about to start screaming at them when one of them said, let's go around the bend and see if she's already heading towards us. This birthed a different idea, and I did the Homer Simpson bushes thing. Well, not quite since the bushes weren't very dense, but I tried my best. I heard them walk around the corner and positioned myself facing the bike path, grabbed a thin branch, and waited. Then I saw their shadows, then them. Just as they were about to walk past me, I snapped the branch. Now would be the time to mention that I'm pretty pale with jet black, almost waist-length hair that I let loosely hang to the sides of my face. The two dunces turned their heads at the twig snapping, saw me, and screamed like toddlers. Hot dang, I didn't know grown-ups even had this kind of vocal range. They even grabbed at each other from sheer terror. Sadly, the moment was quickly ruined by me almost peeing my pants with howling laughter, but it was still very nice while it lasted. The aftermath was probably what everyone expects. They became angry and started shouting at me. I shouted back, asking what they were intending to do then, followed by them sheepishly stammering around a bit and then admitting that they had it coming. And finally us going back to the party and me boasting to the others as well as recreating the visual effects over and over while cackling. I love any kind of revenge or prank like this where you can flip it right around on its head and surprise the person trying to surprise you. I feel like you see this kind of thing all the time on social media. There will be a video of a guy just like hiding just around the edge of the stairwell, expecting to scare the person coming up, only for the person to turn it around and scare them in return. I always get a kick out of that. Horror Discipline 69 commented, "They got lucky. My friend tried to follow me as a joke at night in a park. He got hit in the face with a bag full of dog poop before I recognized who he is and that he's not going to unalive me." But with that being said, that's all the time we have for today. Now, if you want to hear another absolutely crazy revenge story, maybe even involving more dog poop, check out that video on the left. Or if you missed my latest video, check out that video on the right. That said, I'll see you all next time with some more stories.